I challenge you to watch Drive Me Crazy and not constantly sing the Britney Spears song, particularly that this stars Melissa Joan Hart. Melissa Joan Hart, we know, was friends with Britney, and Britney appeared in an episode of Sabrina, I believe the year after this film came out. It's all a coincidence, but the song will get stuck in your head. With regards to the film itself, I don't think it's one that's going to stick in your head for too long. I found it to be quite dull. Maybe I'm not the target audience. It's rated PG-13, but I found that it was quite juvenile. I feel like it was trying to appeal to the older teenager, but it just, I mean, I'm 29, I'm not necessarily the target audience, but I do love Melissa Joan Hart, but I just feel like it was trying too hard to be something that it isn't, and it's very dated. There are a lot of films that were released in the 90s and the early noughties that deal with similar topics. High school students, but they don't ever feel that dated. Let's take Mean Girls as an example. I know it's a bit fair to compare this to Mean Girls because Mean Girls is at the top of its game, but it just feels like it should have been left behind in the 90s. It's directed by John Schultz, written by Todd Strasser and Rob Thomas, starring, of course, Melissa Joan Hart as Nicole. And the description from IMDb is as follows. Nicole and Chase used to be BFFs, then junior high happened. The high school centennial dance is coming, but Nicole gets dumped. So does Chase. They stage a relationship to get at their exes. They visit each other's worlds. Love in the air? Question mark. So the description there sums it up pretty well. Basically, they lived next door to each other growing up. They used to be best friends. They grew apart as they got older. But to get back at their exes, they pretend to be in a romantic relationship ahead of the high school dance. It sounds interesting. There are times when the narrative was pretty interesting because I wanted to see if it would work. Would their exes actually feel jealous? Or had their exes moved on? And ultimately, will Chase and Nicole rekindle that friendship that they had, and will it become so much more? It's a very predictable film. There is an element of Clarissa explains it all in it, insofar as Chase keeps entering Nicole's bedroom, presumably through the window, which is, I guess, a little Easter egg if you're a fan of Clarissa. It's not a bad film insofar as the characters' actions or the acting or the narrative development. You know, everything makes sense. The characters' actions are believable. Actually, what I found very believable about this is the representation of the high school teenager, which is also something I found uncomfortable, but I'll explain that in a moment. But Nicole at one point gets quite drunk, and usually with this kind of film, the high schoolers are a bit more innocent. They wouldn't touch alcohol, they wouldn't do any of that. It's just about finding a date for the dance. But actually, this has a more realistic representation of the high school teenager in 1999, and I completely applaud it for that. The reason it's uncomfortable is because this was out in 1999, and Melissa Joan Hart looks exactly as she does as Sabrina. Sabrina is everything my childhood was. I have the logo tattooed to my arm. It means the world to me. The nostalgia is everything. So when I watch it, because she still looks a lot like Sabrina did in kind of season 3, it's just like I'm watching Sabrina getting drunk and semi-naked, and it's just a bit weird. That's not the film's fault, that's not Melissa Joan Hart's fault, but it's something that you need to bear in mind if Sabrina means a lot to you. You will not necessarily be able to separate the two because there's no real distinction in the image. The only thing that's different are the outfits. And she does dress quite differently, that's definitely worth noting. As I said, it's not a bad film. It doesn't make any bad decisions in terms of the narrative or the characters' actions. They're very believable. But I just find that not a lot happens. Not a lot of interesting things happen. Yes, I was curious to see what would happen with their plan. I was pretty confident I could work it out, and I did. I'm glad I've seen it once to say I've seen it, because it's been on my list. It's been on my to-watch list for quite a while. Now that I've watched it, I can tick that box. Is it a film I would watch again? No. Would I recommend it? Only if there is a specific pull factor. If you're a fan of Melissa Joan Hart, or of any of the cast, Adrian Grenier plays Chase. If there's anybody else in it who stands out for you, give it a watch. It's not unbearable. But if there's nothing that's kind of made your ears prick up, then I'd say maybe not one to go and rush out to see.